Chapter 6. The Paper Trail. The first thing I did when I got that text was check on Elijah. I didn't even remember crossing the room. Just that 1 second I was frozen by those words, and the next I was standing over his crib, hand on his chest, making sure he was still breathing. Still here. Still mine. But the thing is, I couldn't unread it. He doesn't belong with you. The words slithered around my brain like poison. Whoever sent it, Raven, Mama, one of their sick friends. I didn't care. What mattered was that they still thought they had a claim. Like just because we shared blood that gave them the right to steal him back. Well, not again. Not ever. The next morning I didn't eat. Didn't sleep much either. Just stared at the phone. That number burned into my memory. My heart pounding like it already knew what I had to do. It wasn't enough to hide anymore. I had to fight. And that meant getting legal. I didn't know the first thing about lawyers. All I knew was that they cost money. And money was something I didn't even pretend to have. So I started asking around. Not loudly. Not in a way that would make Gina nervous. But quiet questions. Careful ones. Gina eventually picked up on it. "You in trouble?" she asked one afternoon as I was folding laundry in the hallway. "Not yet," I said. "But I don't plan on waiting for it to find me." She looked at me long and slow, then handed me a piece of paper with a number on it. Legal aid downtown. Ask for a woman named Rochelle. She doesn't flinch easy. Rochelle was everything I wasn't expecting. Young, sharp, unapologetic. Wore combat boots with her slacks and had eyes like she'd seen the inside of too many courtrooms and come out swinging. She didn't offer me tea. Didn't ask how I was holding up. Just sat behind her cluttered desk and said, "Start from the beginning. Don't lie. I'll know." So I told her. Everything. From the night on the porch to the storm, the camper, the CPS visit, and the message that pushed me through her office door. When I was done, she leaned back, arms crossed. "You've got no formal custody paperwork," she said. "Nothing in writing that proves you're his guardian. Not even a birth certificate in your hands." I nodded, ashamed. "I know. You're in a gray zone, Seraphine. And gray zones are dangerous when the people you're up against are playing dirty." I didn't say anything. Just stared at my hands, clenched in my lap. "But," she continued, tapping her pen on her desk, "you're not helpless. You're not invisible. And you're not alone anymore." That word, alone, hit me like a wave. I didn't realize how heavy it had been, carrying that weight solo. Always afraid. Always hiding. "What do I need to do?" I asked her, voice hoarse. She didn't sugarcoat it. "We file for emergency guardianship first. Then we work on permanent custody. You'll need a paper trail. Proof you've been raising Elijah. Photos. Receipts. Testimony. Anything that shows you've been there and they haven't." He nodded. "Okay. And we need to anticipate a response," she added. "If your mother or sister are threatening to take him, they may try to file themselves. And trust me, courts eat up stable homes and two-parent households. We need to get ahead of it." My stomach turned. "I don't care how many rooms they have," I said. "They left him. In a storm. They left me." Rochelle's eyes sharpened. "Then let's make sure a judge knows that too." That night, after Elijah had gone down and the house was quiet, I sat by the little desk in the corner of the room and pulled out my journal. Not to write. To gather. Tore out pages. Days I recorded what Elijah ate, when he cried, how much he weighed. I printed photos from Gina's house printer, the ones Marlon had taken with his old phone of me holding Elijah, feeding him, laughing with him. I even printed the text message. Because I wasn't just building a file. I was building a wall. One they couldn't break through. Marlon came by 2 days later. I showed him the folder. He didn't say much. Just nodded and said, "You're doing the right thing." Then softer, "I'm proud of you, Red." That's what he'd started calling me, Red. Because of the auburn tint in my hair when the sun hit it just right. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. But I felt something in my chest shift. Not just fear anymore. Not just survival. Determination. I thought I had more time. That was my first mistake. I thought if I moved fast enough, gathered enough documents, filed the right papers, stayed one step ahead, I could build a wall strong enough to keep them out. But you can't outrun people who know exactly where to stab you. It was Rochelle who called me first. "Are you sitting down?" she asked, no pleasantries, just straight business. I was standing by the window in Gina's living room, watching Elijah gum a teething toy and kick his feet against the mat Marlon had brought over. He looked so peaceful, so unaware of the war swirling around his name. "They filed," she said. "Your mother and your sister. Joint petition for temporary custody of Elijah." My mouth went dry. "On what grounds?" Rochelle sighed like she already hated the answer. "They're claiming you're mentally unstable, that you fled the family home after a breakdown, that Elijah was born under unsafe conditions and has been living in unfit housing since." I let out a bitter laugh. "They abandoned us in a storm, in the middle of the night. And we're going to say that," she said calmly. "But Seraphine, they have a house. Money. The court system doesn't always care about truth. It cares about presentation." I looked down at my son. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear her next words. "We have 7 days to respond. I'll draft the objection and file for emergency sole custody. But I need you ready to show up." "I'm ready," I said, though I wasn't sure if that was true. But I was done being silent. Later that day I told Gina everything. I expected her to be annoyed, maybe even ask me to leave. Instead, she handed me a mug of sweet tea and said, "So what's our game plan?" That word again kept catching me off guard. When Marlon came by that evening and I told him about the custody petition, he didn't raise his voice, didn't curse. He just sat down slow and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I figured they'd pull something like this," he said. "People like that don't know how to lose." "They don't even want Elijah," I said. "They just want to punish me." Marlon looked at me, really looked at me. "You think they're coming for him because they care," he said. "They're coming because they lost control of you. And now they want to rip you open to get it back." He was right, and I hated how much it made sense. That night I opened the shoebox again. I hadn't touched it since the day we left the camper. I thought I was done needing it, done needing them. But I wasn't pulling it out to mourn. I was pulling it out to fight. Inside were pieces of truth I hadn't realized I'd kept. A photo of me at 17, belly round, eyes sunken but proud. A receipt from the church pantry that listed my name when I picked up formula. Torn pages from my old journal where I'd scribbled things like Raven said I'll ruin the bloodline and Mama told me Elijah is a punishment. I scanned every one of them at the library the next morning and emailed it all to Rochelle. Proof. Or at least enough to shake the lie they were building. The court date came quicker than I could brace for. Rochelle helped me pick out a shirt that didn't look too young or too tired. Gina offered to watch Elijah outside the courtroom while I went in. "You breathe, you stand tall, and you let Rochelle do the talking," Gina said, smoothing my shoulders before I left. "But don't be afraid to speak when it's your turn. Judges can smell fear. Don't give them any." I nodded, heart in my throat. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not just temperature-wise. Emotionally. Terrell. My mother and Raven were already seated when I walked in. Both of them in matching navy blue dresses, hair pulled tight, faces pinched into fake concern. My stomach twisted. Mama didn't even look at me. Raven did. Smile. Like she'd already won. The judge entered. The case was called. And then they started talking about me like I wasn't even there. Raven went first. "She left the house in the middle of a breakdown," she said. "We begged her to get help, but she ran. We didn't even know where the baby was." My mother chimed in, voice shaky and rehearsed. "She's never had a job, Your Honor. She's isolated, unstable. We're just trying to do what's best for Elijah." I almost stood up and screamed. But Rochelle placed a hand on my arm. When it was our turn, she rose smoothly. "Your Honor, what they're describing is a lie," Rochelle said. My client was abandoned. With a newborn. In the middle of a storm. Locked out of her own home. We have evidence of her caring for her son. Records of food assistance, witness statements. What the petitioners are doing is not concern. It's retaliation. The judge looked at me. Miss Tate, do you wish to speak? Understood. My knees shook, but my voice didn't. They left us to die, I said. That's the truth. And now they want to take him because I didn't break the way they hoped I would. I may not have money, but I have something they never gave me, love. And Elijah. He's not a weapon. He's my son. The judge studied me for a long time. And then he said, temporary custody remains with the mother until a full hearing can be held. I almost collapsed. Not a victory. But not a loss. Not yet. When we stepped out of that courthouse, I felt like I'd just surfaced from underwater. The wind hit my face, and I gasped like I'd been holding my breath for weeks. Gina was outside waiting with Elijah, bouncing him gently in her arms. As soon as he saw me, he reached out, and I held him like I never wanted to let go. Still yours, Gina whispered in my ear. And I nodded, but my grip only tightened. Because deep down I knew. This wasn't over. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the judge's face. How neutral he looked when he ruled in my favor, but also how easily that could change at the next hearing. They had money. They had polish. They knew how to lie with charm. Me. Had one chance. So I sat at the kitchen table long after everyone else went to bed, flipping through that old shoebox again. Searching. Looking for anything I might have missed. And that's when I found it. It was hidden between the folded pages of a grocery list Mama had written. On the back, in handwriting that wasn't mine, was a sentence that stopped my breath. He said if I told anyone, they'd call me a liar too. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't my handwriting. It was Raven's. I remembered that day like it had just happened. I was about 13. Raven was 16. She came into our room in the middle of the night, shaking like a leaf, clutching that torn-up grocery list in her hand. Her face was pale. Her voice was flat. She didn't say his name, but she didn't have to. We both knew who she meant. Uncle Tobias. Mama's younger brother. The one who'd always been too friendly when Daddy wasn't looking. The one who hugged too long and made offhand comments about how pretty we were getting. I remembered how Raven shoved that list into my hands and whispered, "If something happens to me, you show this to someone. Promise me." Promise. But the next morning Mama found the note. She slapped it out of my hand and told me I'd misunderstood. She dragged Raven out back, and when they came back inside, Raven's face was blank. Me. Like someone had switched off the lights behind her eyes. We never talked about it again. Till now. I sat there for hours just staring at the paper. 'Cause here's the thing, I could use it. I could take it to Rochelle, let her submit it as evidence. If the court saw the kind of environment Elijah would be entering if he ended up with them, there'd be no way they'd grant custody. But doing that meant exposing something Raven had buried for years. It meant making her pain public. And no matter what she'd done to me, I still knew what it felt like to be voiceless. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't eat the next morning. But I did pick up the phone. "Hello." Her voice hadn't changed. Defensive. "It's me," I said. "Don't hang up." Beep. Then. "What do you want?" "I found something. From when we were kids." Silence. "You wrote it on the back of a grocery list. About Uncle T." Still silence, but this time I could hear her breath hitch. Pressed on. "I'm not calling to hurt you. But you need to know. I might have to use it." "No," her voice was sharp. Instant. "That was nothing. I was being dramatic. Mama handled it. Raven, he hurt you. And Mama buried it. That's not handling it. That's silencing it." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I knew you'd do this. Use me. Like everyone else." "Raven," I whispered. "You used me. You left me with a baby in the middle of a storm. You tried to take him away from me in court. And all I ever did was survive. Waited. And for the first time since this war started, she didn't have a comeback. Just quiet breathing on the other end. I won't say your name, I said. But I will say what he did. The court needs to know what kind of people you're aligning with. If I don't speak, Elijah's at risk. Then I hung up. 'Cause even if it hurt, I had to choose my son over her silence. I gave the note to Rochelle. She read it twice, slowly, then looked at me over the edge of the paper. Are you sure? She asked. He nodded. Good, she said. Because this just turned into a war they can't win quietly. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and prep. Gina helped me rehearse how to speak in court without freezing. Marlon sat with Elijah during every meeting. There was a calm building in me now. Not because I wasn't scared, but because I wasn't alone anymore. I had people in my corner, and I had the truth. For the first time in my life that felt like enough. There's a kind of stillness that follows after you finally speak your truth. Not peace. No, not yet. It's the quiet before a storm. The kind where the wind dies and everything goes too still, too fast. That's what life felt like after I gave Rochelle that letter. For the first time someone on the outside knew. And for the first time, I felt like I might not be alone. But the silence that followed wasn't comforting. It was loaded. Like the world was waiting to see if I'd survive what I'd just set in motion. Started small. A folded note left on the community bulletin board outside the bodega near Gina's house. I saw it as I passed with Elijah strapped to my chest. His tiny head tucked under my chin. The paper was folded tight, the edges slightly damp from the morning dew. I don't know why I opened it. I just knew it was for me. Inside, one word, scratched in what looked like red ink. Enough. No name. No context. Just that. I looked around quickly. No one staring. No one following. Still, I clutched Elijah closer, picked up my pace, and didn't stop until I was back behind Gina's locked gate. That night, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe even a coincidence. Prank even. There were flyers all over that board. Could have been meant for someone else. But I didn't believe that. Not really. And 2 days later it got worse. I had just gotten off the bus from the legal aid office downtown. Elijah had fallen asleep on my back, all warm and soft and heavy. My feet hurt. My stomach hadn't stopped growling since noon. I walked up the sidewalk toward the house, past the small lot behind the corner store where Gina let me stash the old stroller. It was shredded. Fabric slashed. One wheel broken clean off. Like someone took a knife to it and wanted me to know. I stood there for a long time just staring. Elijah stirred, maybe sensing the shift in my body. My fists clenched. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I turned around, walked back to the house, and locked the door behind me. The next scare came 3 nights later. It was cold. I had Elijah wrapped in 2 blankets and was dozing on the couch when my phone buzzed beside me. Unknown number. One new voicemail. Press play. Nothing. Just breathing. Low. Heavy. Lows. And right before it cut out, a low voice rasped. Drop it. Or we'll finish what we started. I didn't drop the phone this time. I picked it up again, dialed Rochelle and told her everything. By morning, she'd started the paperwork for a protective order. We'll file this week, she said. And in the meantime, document everything, Seraphine. Every note. Every scare. Even if it feels small. I didn't have a printer. Barely had signal in the room Gina gave me. But I wrote it all down. Dates, times, what was said, what was touched. Because the people who hurt me, they were getting sloppy. And scared people get dangerous. That afternoon Marlon showed up. He didn't ask for details. Didn't make me say the words. He just came in with a small battery-powered security cam he'd picked up secondhand, and he mounted it above the front door. Gina said you got spooked, he said as he fiddled with the screws. This'll send clips to your email. It ain't fancy, but it works. I watched him work in silence. Elijah curled against me. You always fix things. I asked quietly. He looked at me, eyes soft but steady. I don't fix people. But I protect what matters. Later that night, after Gina turned in and the house was dark, I sat on the bed scrolling through the camera app on my cracked phone. Nothing unusual. Until 3:17 a.m. Clip. Less than 10 seconds long. Someone, tall, broad, hood up, walked right up to the door. They didn't knock. Didn't speak. Just stood there. Head tilted toward the camera. Breathing. Watching. And then they turned and walked away. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. But I didn't run either. Because the thing about survivors, we get tired, we get scared, but we don't back down. And I'd already lost too much. I wasn't about to lose my son too. Courtrooms don't look like they do in the movies. There's no dramatic lighting, no pounding gavels, no sudden gasps when secrets come out. Just fluorescent lights, the faint smell of old coffee, and people trying not to look at each other. But for me, it felt like the walls were pulsing with every heartbeat. The courthouse was 15 blocks away. Marlon walked me there that morning. He didn't hover, didn't ask if I was okay. He just showed up at 7 a.m. sharp, hoodie on, thermos in hand. "You good?" he asked when we reached the steps. I swallowed hard. Elijah was with Gina, and my hands felt too empty without him. "No," I said. "But I'm here." He nodded. "That's enough." Inside, Rochelle met me with a small stack of folders and a warm, calm smile like she hadn't been awake all night helping me fill out the protective order. "We're first on the docket," she whispered as we sat at a. "Judge Garza's no-nonsense but fair. Just breathe." Tried. I really did. But when the bailiff called my name and I stood up, my legs didn't feel like they belonged to me. My mouth was dry. My palms soaked. And then I saw them. Uma and Raven. Sitting 2 rows behind me, dressed like respectable churchwomen. Hands folded. Faces blank. I almost turned around. Almost left. But then I remembered Elijah's stroller, slashed open like a warning. And I stayed. Rochelle spoke first. Clear. She laid out the facts like puzzle pieces, one by one. That I was Elijah's sole caretaker. That I had no criminal record. That my mother and sister had a documented history of emotional abuse. That they had previously abandoned Elijah during a storm and then made threats once I sought legal help. And most of all, that I was done hiding. Then she handed over the notes, the voicemail recording, and stills from the security camera footage. The judge scanned through the files silently. His face unreadable. I sat frozen, gripping the edge of the seat like it might split open beneath me. Finally, he looked over his glasses. "Ms. Raven Williamson." My sister stood like she was in a pageant. Smooth and practiced. "Yes, Your Honor. You've been named in these documents as having harassed the petitioner and endangered her minor child. Do you wish to respond?" She smiled. Actually smiled. "Your Honor, my sister's not well. She's been unstable for years. We've tried helping her. But when she ran off with that baby, we feared for the child's safety. That's why we've reached out. Not to harass, to protect." My vision tunneled. I almost laughed. Protect. She left my child outside like garbage. I don't know what came over me, but I stood. Not like I planned to. Not even when Rochelle nudged my arm gently. I just rose to my feet, shaking all over. And I said, "Your Honor, my family didn't want to protect Elijah. They wanted to erase him. And me." I turned toward Raven, voice trembling. "You left him. You both did. And now that I'm getting help, now that I'm standing on my own, now you want to come back? That's not protection. That's control. And I'm done letting you control me." The room went quiet. Even the judge looked moved. Or maybe just tired. It was hard to tell. But he nodded slowly and said, "Thank you, Ms. Williamson. I've heard enough." The protective order was granted. Temporary for now, but real. They couldn't come near me. They couldn't come near Elijah. It was the first legal line I had ever drawn between us. And it felt like air after years of suffocation. Marlon waited outside when it was over, leaning against the railing like always. When I saw him, I didn't say anything. Just exhaled hard, like I'd been holding my breath for a decade. He opened his arms without a word. And for the first time since Elijah was born, I let someone catch me when I broke. But that night the storm came back. Not rain. Not wind. Something worse. A knock at the back door of Gina's house. Quiet. Deliberate. Just after midnight. I froze in the hallway. Gina was out. Marlon wasn't around. I crept up to the peephole, heart racing. No one there. But on the ground, another note. This one was different. Photo. Was old, blurry. But I recognized the faces, me as a little girl on a picnic blanket. Next to a man whose face I couldn't remember. And on the back, in sharp black ink. Ask her about him. Before she disappears too. Thanks for watching. And stay tuned to AJ Family Drama. I will continue my story in part 3.